Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Keen Partnership podcast series, where we dive into how top-down strategic solutions are marrying up and combining with executional platforms to drive an interoperable experience for marketers to really navigate a very dynamic and complex landscape. So I have the pleasure of welcoming Rachel Tipograph, who is the founder and CEO of MikMak. MikMak is a pioneer in the area of social commerce and shoppable digital experiences. We have a budding partnership with MikMak. I'm really excited to dig into the partnership, the landscape that we're currently facing in marketing and marketing technology, and really start to talk through how interoperable partnerships and systems across the MarTech stack can really drive more value for marketers. Welcome, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.
If you wouldn't mind starting by giving us a little bit of background about yourself as well as MikMak, and we can explore how we're partnering together.
Great. Well, thanks, Greg. Happy to be here. So I'm Rachel Tipograph, the founder and CEO of MikMak. MikMak, we are a SaaS platform similar to Keen. We work with over 2,000 of the biggest brands in the world, and we enable commerce in all the places where consumers spend time. So think Meta, TikTok, the Trade Desk, CTV, brand websites, mobile apps, you name it. And then because we enable commerce in all those places, we then let you know the effectiveness of those investments all the way from impression down to basket level sales data. And I think the beautiful thing about MikMak and Keen is that at the end of the day, our customers work with us for similar reasons, which is to understand the effectiveness of their marketing investments so they can drive growth and beat their competitors.
Awesome. Really powerful. We're really excited about the partnership as well. I mean, one of the things that we continue to see in the marketplace is obviously there's a lot of complexity in the data, a lot of fragmented data coming in. So the ability to really have both a holistic understanding of your marketing, which is where Keen's SaaS platforms really focus on. How do we really understand the cross-channel interaction effects tied directly to financial outcomes with the executional piece? So a lot of our clients are always asking for, okay, it's great that we get the strategic piece, but how do we start to drill down into more of the executional components and get to the campaign level and really understand how that's driving conversion? How are you seeing kind of the marketplace unfold as well from both your perspective, with MikMak being a powerful execution tool, and some of the demands more holistically across the entire marketing mix?
Yeah, so I've been building MikMak for the last 10 and a half years of my life. And so I started the company in what I describe as the social media era, meaning every brand that was coming to market was built on the backbone of Facebook ads and Shopify.
Right.
What did that do for marketing? It allowed one-to-one attribution. We were living in a time of deterministic attribution. Mm-hmm. That started to become challenged, and there are two main reasons why that playbook started to become challenged. One was changes in data privacy. So things like GDPR, CCPA really started to take form in 2016 and beyond, which started to challenge the classic methods of deterministic attribution. And then the second big thing is that Apple woke up one day and realized that companies like Alphabet and Meta were building billion-dollar advertising businesses in their hardware, and they weren't seeing a cent of it. And Apple decided to change the whole nature of how we automatically opt in for our data to be monetized to now automatically opt out. And that happened around summer of 2019. It started to take real form in 2020. And there was a huge shift that happened in advertising. And that created the rise of retail media because the retailers owned first-party data to monetize as opposed to platforms like Meta and Alphabet. And so over the last 4.5 years, the industry has been shifting away from deterministic one-to-one attribution, though we all want that to be true. Because of the reasons that I just said, it unfortunately is really hard to pull off. And now the whole industry is moving towards probabilistic attribution, which is actually not new. And Greg, you've been playing in this space for a long time, but traditional MMMs or MTAs is essentially built on that. And so my big bet at MikMak is that for the foreseeable future, what brands are going to need to understand is that while we all want to live in a world of one-to-one attribution, we really can't. And we all have to be comfortable with probabilistic attribution. But the big shift is kind of what you're getting at, Greg, which is that attribution and strategy cannot be divorced from enablement and execution. These things actually have to work together in real time to drive real-time business results. And so I think that's, why we're here today discussing this, because our worlds are starting to converge because market forces are forcing them to converge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you mentioned, I've been in this game for 25 years. Started Keen 15 years ago, and one of the big reasons why we wanted to disrupt this space was because the existing probabilistic approach from traditional marketing mix wasn't doing the job, and everything at that point was shifting to deterministic one-to-one attribution. And I'm excited now to see, because that piece was siloed, and being able, based on the data that was available, to do that type of analysis. But there's so much value in it to be then married up with a more holistic probabilistic approach to be able to understand the full funnel impact of marketing. So a marketer can actually look at strategically across their entire marketing mix, 100% of their working dollars, and then drill down into components of their mix in a very detailed way that drives insights and decisions at that level that drive improved performance over time. And that's the power of SaaS as well. So really excited about our pieces coming together, and it's exciting to see the interoperability starting to take hold, because it's a belief that we've had for a long time that there's all these great SaaS platforms out there, and the power of 1 + 1 = 3. If some of these start to come together, could be really game changing in terms of where the industry is going.
Yeah, I'm a very big believer that when it comes to software, our ability to drive value is directly connected to the partnership ecosystem that we can integrate with. That's how brands win. That also drives EBITDA synergies. And so, yeah, I think the whole space is heading that way.
So talk to me a little bit about the specific use case with Keen and how you see it really driving value for CPG marketers and brand marketers across the spectrum.
Yeah, I think the big step change is that MikMak is real time. We have been reporting on real time marketing effectiveness that allows brands to then make real time optimizations. Commerce is like Wall Street day trading. You cannot set it and forget it. If you want to win, you got to be hands on keyboard. And so the power of our two solutions working together is really this major step change that analytics can't be just a look back, look forward. It actually has to be connected to real-time marketing activity that you then can make real-time optimizations on top of. And so I think that's the promise of what we're really trying to demonstrate together.
Definitely. And I think that there is so much, obviously, we say we're near real time, but we're really updating monthly because it's much more involved to actually get, and we're looking across, and there's data lags and everything else. But yeah, obviously, to your point, marketing happens every single day, and the need to optimize at a campaign at a more granular level is really important. But the missing piece has always been, how do you funnel that information back into a more holistic model that's more strategic, which is where I see a lot of the opportunity as well. And given that we use a Bayesian approach, we can start feeding that information from a lower level optimization standpoint into our model, so it's more reflective of what's happening day to day. So I think that's where the top down and bottom up approach is so powerful and can unlock so much opportunity for marketers going forward.
Absolutely. And it also organizationally starts to force teams to work together in a way that they haven't before. And I'm going to just take a guess, Greg, that often the users of your platform sit between marketing and finance, while the users of my platform is very much marketing day-to-day execution. And so it's actually going to bring the finance team closer to the center of the sun, the people on the front lines that are actually driving product every single day.
Yeah, I think there's so much power in being able to look holistically as a business and recognize you're all managing a brand, right? So the silos don't really make a ton of sense organizationally, and it leads you to bad decisions, right? And I know one of the great opportunities that we see in working with you is that we're able to really get full funnel understanding and credit for how say meta ads are driving ROI and driving sales and revenue in other customers like Target and Amazon, et cetera. And we're often talking about you got to really get an understanding of the full funnel impact and the interaction effects and the halo effects of everything that you're doing, because it isn't siloed, even though that's how a lot of the companies are managing their marketing spend right now. Right, when you run a meta ad, it's going to have a long-term impact. It's going to have an impact on other channels, and as marketers, we need to be able to really understand that and get credit for that.
100%. And also, it's going to lead to efficiencies, because in some areas, people are overspending or they're double dipping and they have no visibility into that.
Yeah, the biggest problem with ROAS, right? It keeps, my ROAS keeps going up. I'm just going to keep funneling more money in. Obviously, that doesn't account for diminishing returns and marginal effects. And that's really where we can understand to make sure that we're optimizing every dollar that's being spent, especially, given the environment that we're in right now, where, budgets are going to continue to be constrained, and we got to make sure that every dollar is working as hard as possible.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we're seeing in the marketplace is the inability to really connect marketing decisions to financial outcomes. And there's such a focus on historical measurement and ROIs and contributions that a lot of times we're seeing brand overspend in certain channels versus others, and not really understanding the marginal impact of marketing dollars on performance. Curious what you're seeing in your world, and whether you're seeing some similarities at the more granular campaign level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for a lot of our shared customers, in many ways right now, their media plans are handcuffed because they have pressures from retailers to increase spend. Yet if you look at their earnings, volume sales are down.
Right.
And so where the industry is right now is it needs to drive growth. And in order to drive growth, you got to invest in upper funnel media. But that's really hard if you already have all these large commits with RMNs that have proven they can drive essentially last click conversion, but the upper funnel plays don't make a lot of economic sense. I share all of this because we're recording it in the end of February of 2025, and media has been quite volatile already in 2025. We kicked off the year with the potential TikTok ban. Around January 19th, MikMak saw brand TikTok traffic go to zero. We're now back to almost normal 2024 levels, but to put that into a frame of reference, TikTok on any given day in 2024 was MikMak's second largest channel, with Meta being number one and Alphabet being number two. While TikTok was down, where did brands reallocate those dollars? They actually reallocated those dollars to Alphabet, because you had YouTube, which could be the power of upper funnel, video-based media, with paid search, bottom of the funnel conversion media. People are already spending like half of their media budget on Meta, so they weren't going to move more into there. And that was also right around the time that Zuckerberg made his announcement of removing fact checking from the platform, which is another thing that adds volatility to media, because you got to think about your brand safety. So I share all of this because media is real time, and the things that are happening in the industry are changing overnight. And so you cannot set it or forget it to drive business outcomes. And I think all of this is leading to what are some challenging earnings for a lot of our shared customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you've seen, I know everything moves to the bottom of the funnel, and it becomes more and more expensive to get the same amount of volume. And it's not considering at all the interaction effects between the top of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel, which we know and are able to quantify in our system should be a 60-40 split or 70-30. And we're seeing the opposite, right? So the majority of it being at the bottom of the funnel. And I think marketers really have to trust and lean into the fact that, if you invest, you're going to have more sustained value creation if you invest at the top of the funnel, and your performance marketing at the bottom of the funnel is going to be a lot more effective. I had a client the other day mention to us, they were revenue growth management. We were talking about how do we move trade to the top of the funnel, and she was like, "Well, I think we're gonna have to deal with a short-term hit to our financials." And I said, "Well, that's not necessarily true. If you're optimizing, to your point, on a more continuous basis, you can make sure that every dollar on a day-to-day basis is spent well. So you actually should see improvement in performance just through the optimization, and then you'll have a better, overlay of the top of the funnel activity to drive your brand. So it's something that I think we're seeing more and more of, obviously, and there needs to be a shift to real to be able to focus on long-term sustainable earnings growth.
Yeah, and just look at some of the world's oldest, most relevant brands. P&G,
Right.
Coca-Cola, Nike. Brands that stand the test of time invest in brand. They invest in upper funnel media.
Couldn't agree more. Another reason why we have such a great partnership. So, curious, where else you see, opportunity in terms of the Martech stack. I mean, obviously, we're two pieces of the puzzle, but we're constantly looking at ways to build that stack out and really drive that interoperability across the entire landscape.
Yeah. I describe our overall ecosystem as the commerce marketing tech stack. And the entire ecosystem is in service of driving demand and then conversion. And so in the world that we're playing in, I think that there's the standard players that have always existed that you essentially need to invest in to do day-to-day business in the space. So that would be the PIMs and the DAMs and the digital shelf analytic partners, the MMM partners, the shoppable media enablement partners, the data enrichment partners like the Nielsen IQs and the Circanas of the world. And then ideally, all of that is laddering up to your CDP, where you can start to own as much of that data as possible as an organization and democratize it so you can make business decisions across the org. I think based on a lot of the macro factors that are at play right now for a lot of our shared customers, the other areas that I think are going to start to come into the stack have to do with supply chain, which an organization has an entire other stack around their supply chain and their ERP, and then essentially around revenue growth management. Because when you think about how people drive profitability, sure, working media dollars is often the largest expense, but really where the margin gain has been over the last decade has been around pricing and price elasticity. And so you've had a separate team working on revenue growth management, a separate team working on marketing, a separate team working on supply chain, but all of these things need to work together. And my big belief is over the next 5 years and definitely the next decade, the CMO role and the chief commercial officer role are going to collapse. And it's going to be the chief growth officer who owns everything that I just described.
Yeah, I think that's nirvana, right? Because it goes back to I couldn't agree more. It goes back to your earlier point around the silos and the need to break it down. And, I grew up in most of my CPG marketing career was at Campbell's. So we had a general management structure. So even though I was a brand marketer, I still had P&L responsibility, and I was able to at least have dotted line understanding of what's happening in supply chain. I don't know how you get to a demand forecast without understanding how all of those pieces come together. And that's really what we're trying to drive at the end of the day. And now all the complexity of e-commerce channel versus brick and mortar and retail media and customers demanding more and more of the marketing budget, you have to look at it holistically, and you got to have an understanding of how that's driving production and profitability, and your forecasting on a monthly basis to really understand. And that requires a connection almost directly to the finance organization as well, and making sure that marketers are speaking the same language as finance, dollars and cents, right? So how do I translate what's happening on the marketing side and be able to drive efficient consumer demand and marry that up with my P&L and an understanding of how we're building long-term value.
And to your point of your alma mater, Campbell's, they just promoted their CFO to become CEO. And so, maybe that's a place to look. I think when I look at the customer base, our customer base, The companies that are already shifting towards this model are the PE backed, like CPG organizations. They're nimble enough. They can read the tea leaves on where the space is heading. And I'm already seeing them really start to operate in this way. Will the publicly traded CPGs get there? I think they're just going to be forced to, and we'll see that shift over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. What do you think are the biggest barriers right now? We talked a little bit about organizational structure at these companies that we work with that needs to, and there's change management that's involved in going from more of a human, more manual process to more tech enabled and tech driven. What do you see as kind of the big barriers to overcome for us to get to this new space?
Yeah, I mean, first we're talking about humans at the end of the day, and so I think a lot of what I just described also really impacts people's livelihoods and jobs, and so to make these huge shifts, I think the market forces it. You're probably going to be in a tough spot when you're making these shifts, and so I do think the headwinds that CPG brands are currently experiencing are going to be the catalyst for these huge shifts in personnel structure. So I think that's number one. Like, we have people fighting for job security, their egos, their hard careers that they've worked on for decades. Like, all of that is at stake. I think the second is technology. So all of these technical solutions exist, but do they easily play together? Is question number one. And then two, I think we both know this, the biggest disruptor, not just in our businesses, but all software companies, is AI, right? And how is that going to accelerate the change? And then the third would be change management and ways of working. But I think it goes people, tech, ways of working that's going to create the shift over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, definitely. I think to your earlier point around some of the PE-backed companies tend to be the growth brands, challenger brands in the marketplace as well. They're going to drive that change from a competition perspective as well. They're going to be more nimble. They're going to be more tech driven, and we're starting to see that come as well in the marketplace.
100%.
So this has been a fantastic conversation. I love your point of view, and I think there's a real reason why we have such a great partnership, is that we see the world in the same way, and how the world is going to continue to unfold. Clearly, there's going to be more and more technology that's driving performance and decision making in the marketing world, and I think that this kind of partnership, starts to really move that forward. So being able to give marketers the tools to be top-down strategic, but also, connect that information and learning directly to the day-to-day optimization of marketing that's happening through, execution platforms like MikMak. So really excited about where we're headed as a partnership, and your expertise in this conversation, and excited for the future.
Me too. Well, thanks to Keen and you, Greg, and we look forward to collaborating.
Awesome.